Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Karen Saunders. I am one of the Big Country Master Gardeners, and we're here today to talk about trees. This was made for the Abilene area and the Big Country. And in opening, I'd like to say Happy Valentine's Day to everybody first. When we buy trees, we're putting an investment in them. And if you're going to spend that kind of money, you kind of need some guidelines, and that's what this is about. It's not the entire guideline. It's just something to get you started. When you purchase those trees, some of them come with instructions, some of them do not. And I would recommend that before you purchase a tree, you do your homework, go buy our guide, get a hold of Texas A&M because they have an awesome site that will cover almost anything and everything you want to know about trees, plants, whatever. Many of us, when we get the toys for the kids at Christmas, they always say, some assembly required. Oh, we look at the box, piece of cake, not a problem. After the third go around, honey, where are the directions? And that's what these are. These are a little bit of direction to keep you out of trouble before you get started. The first thing it says is why plant trees, and it gives you a list of some of the things that you might want to consider. Most of us do it for aesthetics, property value enhancement, and many of us who are involved in a lot of the nature things do it for the birds and the bees. And I might add here, reading from these things and giving you some guidance is one thing, but many of you probably have more experience than I do. This is my third or fourth go-around with giving a talk on trees. So please, if I say something that you question, raise your hand, or if you have suggestions, raise your hand. I like a proactive audience. The first thing they discover is where to plant, but I'd like to back up on that and say, when and where are you going to plant? We have made recommendations in the past that you purchase your trees in the fall and plant them sometime between July, August, and December. In here, it tells us that we can also plant right up to April. A little bit of hesitation on that because by the time we start seeing March, we're starting to get into some really warm weather. And by the time we hit April and May, it's really hot. And some of these young trees don't adjust real well. You will have them brought in, say, from the field to the nursery. They get batted about a little bit. Then you're going to move them to your home, and they get a little bit on the shocky side. And you want to give them the best advantage they've got, which means for me, you want to plant them when it's a little bit cooler so you have a little bit more control over them. One caveat I'd like to say, when you purchase your trees, if you were to go to Lowe's or a nursery or somewhere and purchase a tree, do yourself a favor and bring some burlap to wrap the top part of the tree, or have a way to put it in the back of your truck and semi-cover it. The reason I say that is because the trees, while they're being moved, if they've been watered well, are going to be transpiring through their leaves. And they're going to get a little bit shocky when you move them again anyway. And part of the problem that you have with that is when they're doing one of these numbers in the tree, you're bending it back and forth, and some of them have arrived home broken. And there's not a lot you can do about it. You can cover the wound and hope that one or the other will become the main. But let's not break it if we don't have to. The other thing is it keeps some of the moisture in there. And I've often seen the nursery people, when they bring the bigger trees, do the same thing. They let them, I call it willowing in the wind, and it just, I worry for the tree. Because you're not only shocking them from the top, you're shocking them from the root ball. And let's talk about the root ball. When you purchase that tree, whether it's in a container or a root ball, you want to check those roots. Depending on how big it is or how tall it is, it's going to have been in that container or the burlap for quite a while. The roots have a tendency to do what we call girdling. In other words, they circle the pot. That's like circling the drain for plants or trees, because it goes back on itself and doesn't get a chance to branch out. And you want those branches out. Research your tree that you're purchasing. Find out how they want you to lay it out, because some of these require that you mound them. Some of them require that you just leave them out. And you've all seen the scenes from the Weather Service when they show the storms and you've got these trees over-ended and these limbs are in the air. That's part and parcel because of where they are, how long they've been in the ground, and the kind of watering you've been doing to encourage them to go deep instead of stay level on the plain. When you're taking them out of the pot, check the roots that they're not all girdled and that you can straighten them out. And one thing that I do with mine is, you all have heard of the barrier pins. Some of you use landscaping material and you use those big long staples, as I call them. Staple the root. Don't sink them into the ground real tight, but enough that they will lay in the direction you wish them to go. And again, not all of them have to be that way. Some of them are straight down. Some of them they tell you to lay out. So whichever you prefer to do, lay them out so that they have a chance to grow the way they're supposed to and can gain what they call purchase, so that you want that tree to be able to brace itself and the roots out enough that it can withstand a lot of our West Texas wind. Where to plant. They tell you here, make a sketch of your property and know the existing trees, landscaping beds, building outlines, and any paved areas. Going back a little bit, you want to locate overhead and buried utilities by calling 811. And that's not just for trees, I hate to tell you, your hedges and some of your bigger plants that require more space. I don't know how many of us ever look at the plot plans for the house, where the utilities are, if they even if your seller has them available. But that's one thing that we always ask, because my husband was an engineer. He would go ahead and ask, where are the utilities? Where's the water? Where's the gas? Where? Here we have, at my place we don't have any gas. I don't have to worry about it. But my yard was an old pipe yard. Nobody drew any maps. Nobody left any directions. I don't know what's out there. I do know where the sewer is buried because I helped put part of it in. But that's the only thing I know. And you don't want that surprise of, we've got a gas leak, we're leaking sewage, we've got water spewing all over. And again, the reason for knowing a little bit more about your tree, you do not want to plant it up close to the house, because that is another story about fire hazards. We have another class called Firewise Landscaping about keeping things away from your house, and trees are something to consider. Now, if you've got that 100-year-old oak tree that's been over the house since forever, you're not moving anytime soon, trust me. But there are other things that you need to take in consideration about those trees. Another story for another day. Again, determine your compass directions to help evaluate wind and exposure. Some of the trees are going to require staking, and that's just like taking a hose with a cable in it and just holding it so it's upright, because you know when you first plant it, it's very weak. It's not going to have the stamina to put up with those 50, 60, 70 mile an hour winds or those derechos that come through. When you stake it, make sure that you are loose on the staking. You don't want to have it too tight for two reasons. Number one, your trees do this and go back and forth. It builds strength in their members. And it helps make the roots strong also. So you want to make sure that you've given it stability. And again, selecting the tree that fits your site and your preference, and knowing what your mature size is important. On the back side of one of you have some indications about some of these trees, and it gives, I wish we had taken this and made it a three-parter, because the back page behind that has some more instructions on it. So if you want, make a copy and then put it there so you can see more clearly what all of your benefits and your problems are. It will go on and give you further directions about where you want the trees and how much sunshine they should get. And when we are watering them, we're going to water them fairly often until they're what we decide or determine is called established. Established is fleeting, because some trees will take off and go right away. Other trees will take several months to get acclimated to their new home. And when you are planting your tree, plant it in the soil in which it's going to grow, and do not fertilize it. The reason being is because that tree may be the tree you plant, and nobody else is going to take care of it if you move out of that house. So it has to become established. And the only way it becomes established is if it can grow with the soil there and be able to utilize the nutrients that it has. One of, and I say new, it's not new, it's a years old factor, is they call it no-till gardening. And many of the ranchers have, farmers have learned that when they dig up the soil, it takes way too long for the natural microbes to get started back. So what they've done is they dig a hole only big enough to do what it is they want to plant. Cover it with the natural soil and then mulch. But the reason they do that is because how many of you have the healthiest weeds in town? And the reason you have those healthy weeds is because they have gotten used to the microclimate in there, the microbes that grow, that, what's the word I'm looking for, the words, those are some of your growing points for your plants, trees, plants, shrubs, whatever you're going to put in there. And when you disturb it, you take it away, and that's why everybody goes, well, I planted it last year, but it's still not growing. Well, you took away the natural setting that the soil was in, and it's got to reestablish its bacteria, if you will, good growth bacteria. And that's why they tell you don't dig the hole any bigger than they tell you to. Put the soil back in there, water it until it settles. You may have to add more soil, which is not all wrong. But on your tree, when you get it, whether it's in the burlap or in the container, look at where the line is, or the base of the tree per se. And you're not going to put your soil any deep or any higher than that. They actually ask you to raise it just a little bit or lower the soil so that it's got a little bit more purchase right here at the base so it can get the air, the sunlight, and what have you. You're going to put mulch around it, and failure to do so, it's going to dry out. It will get too much heat in the summer and too much cold in the winter, and it allows the moisture to evaporate out of the soil that you just watered in. Put the mulch is usually I found 4 to 5 inches tall in a donut shape. Do not put it around the base, because what it does is it clogs off. That's the reason you raised it up, so it could get sunshine and fresh air to help with the roots. You don't want to block that off. Put it around and notice where your roots are. One thing that I used to do when I was planting trees elsewhere was I would take those little flags and mark the furthest points of where my roots were, and also your drip lines. Notice where your drip lines are. Some people get trees that are transplanted and they've already got an established drip line. So go with that and where your roots are, and they're usually pretty close together. But you want that mulch that far out so that it's covering the roots that are out, but close enough to the inside that you're protecting those other roots in there too. Design considerations, I think you can read those. You don't need me to read them to you, but let's turn over to the trees on the back side. They've given you this list, and I think on the back here somewhere it tells you, yes it does, that if you want to look, there are comments. It tells you where some of these trees are planted around town. So if you decide you want a certain tree, it will tell you, like this one is an ash. I mean, not an ash, it's a Yopon holly. And they tell you that this is placed in front of City Hall and around the Civic Center entrances. Go look at these trees and see if, as a grown tree, this is what you really want. Because it's just like with puppies. They're cute when they're little, but when they get bigger, they can be a mess. Some of these trees with their berries and their leaves, and some of them have flowers that get all over your sidewalk, all over your yard, and that may not be the kind of tree you really want when it grows up. I was going to try to point out another one that I thought was interesting. But no, if you look at some of these and just go around town and look at them, it will give you an idea. They have on here other species to be considered, and one of them, if I'm not mistaken, is the pear tree, the bodark. And it is one of those that's got messy flowers all over the place. And again, where are you going to plant it? It may not be an issue for you, but if you're going to plant it anywhere that's going to be close to your sidewalk, you're going to be doing a lot of cleaning or hosing off. Tree planting and maintenance. Like I said, they told us we could do it through April, and I'm just a little hesitant to say that because of the upcoming heat, and since the last few years have been a little bit iffy on when we're getting the hot weather. I'd still plant anywhere between August and maybe February. And here again we run into like the cold weather we've got today. Depending on the size of your tree, I would wrap some of these new trees with with at least 2 wraps of burlap. Keep it out of the way. It doesn't have to be up tight, but enough to break that really, really cold wind. Those winds with those tender new buds that started to come out before fall just may kill the ends of those and break them off. And here are your some assembly required, your tree planting and maintenance. Digging a hole 2 times as wide as the root ball. Again, is this a root ball, or are you going to take it from a container that's got longer roots? When they are girdled like that, some of those roots can be staked without any problem. Others of them are so tight that you can't do a whole lot with them, and I would highly recommend getting some rooting hormone, and more as a cover than anything else, because on some of those that are really tight, I would cut part of them and then use that pin to stake it out. But I don't want to leave it, you've got relatively clean roots, and yes, they're going to grow in dirt anyway, but let's not create a wound that we can't do anything with. I'm sure there are other items out there that you can use, but that was the first one that came to mind for me. We've covered most of this, and but again, they tell you to slowly fill the planting hole with water to settle the soil, put in what you need up to that point. Now they say 2 feet deep around the base of the tree. We don't want it at the base, we want it out away from there. And I'm suggesting 4 to 6 inches because right now we're coming up into spring. We're going to get the heat, and then come the fall, we're going to get the cold. And you don't put it on just once. You adjust it as the years go by. When we say mulch, mulch is a loose term because almost anything can be used as mulch. You've got tires, you've got chips, you've got leaves, you've got a half a dozen other things. Something that's worked for me is the cedar bark mulch. And the reason I suggest it is because it does one of these numbers. It gets wet and it creates somewhat of a mat around there. Some of your chips are so dried out that the first big wind's going to take them right out of the yard. And you're going to have to keep replacing those. So do a little bit of research again on your chips because they may or may not work for you. I have several people who have their trees in a more secluded area. One of them's got like a courtyard that she's got cinder blocks. And she's not going to have necessarily that problem. So the colored chips that you can get, not an issue. The city has the recycling center out off 80. And where is that? That's on Sandy Street. And it's off 80. Over by the impound yard for the police department. And that's a recycle center, and they will take your limbs and trees to a certain point. They have where you can take your bigger trees and drop them off, and they don't do anything with them, but you'd be amazed how many artists come out and will take those trees because they turn those big things into coffee tables, patio tables, and do other artwork with them. If you're in doubt, you can give them a call. They're listed under the City of Abilene, so you can check them out. They make those chips in 2 different varieties. One is the bigger chips and one is finer chips. And your preference, if you have a nice area where you think they'll be safe, if you like the looks of those finer chips, then fine. I'm not sure about Walmart because I don't usually buy plants from them, but I know that Lowe's and Home Depot and several of the other stores have the colored chips. I think they come in like a rust brown and a black, and so if that suits where you're going to go, I'd experiment with them at least once, but if you're disappointed, look for a heavier mulch. Like I said, that cedar mulch has always worked for me, and I have no coverage in my yard. It's wide open to the wind because it was an old pipe yard. So the only thing that was there was gravel and weeds.
I have a question.
Yes.
When the city does, mulch, chips and mulches the trees, and then sometimes you can go there and pick up free mulch, is there any risk of transplanting a disease into your yard from the free mulched?
John, what have we discovered about that?
For the most part, there's minimal risk. The main risk would be oak wilt, but usually the mulch is dried out enough that it's killed off the fungal issues. So we really haven't had any issues with transferring of diseases.
Okay. And the other thing is too is the concern has been from some people that what were they sprayed with? Because a lot of us are bird and animal conscious. And we don't want the birds getting into anything that's going to cause them any headache either, because they're going to eat the worms that are under there. And so is there a chance of transference of any of that chemical? And not so much, because once it's been out there, it's been rained on, it's been sunburned, it's been a lot of other things. So you would have very minimal chance of that. And with your mulch that you get from the stores, most of that has been processed or steam cleaned, if you will, so that it doesn't carry a lot of those issues with it.
Cedar milk also repels insects, don't it?
What does, see, yeah.
Cedar?
It will, now, again, if it's really fresh and brand new, yeah, it's going to be better than about 3 months from now where it won't. And in the light of talking about the worms that the birds are going to eat, something to remember is we've got spring coming up, and I don't know how many of you left your leaves on the ground last fall. Leave them longer this spring, because it's a benefit to the birds, because those worms have been procreating all winter long, and so have the bugs underneath these leaves and this mulch. Come spring, when the babies are born, babies do not eat seeds, and mom's out looking for food, and that's the first place she's going to go, is she's going to go be scratching in all those leaves looking for food. So as long as you haven't done any chemical stuff to your yard for those trees, I would leave those leaves there until a little bit later. You'll know when the birds start nesting, and you know, all of us like a clean yard, but clean to what point? I mean, part of the reason we have the trees is to encourage the birds to be there, but if they don't have any food to feed the young, you don't have a whole lot of birds in your yard. And you will have other birds come out from out of the area into your yard looking for it, especially to find out that the locals have a hook on where all the guys are living. Fertilizer. The recommendation, again, is that plant has to learn, that tree or shrub has to learn to grow where it's living. And they recommend you hold off for at least a year. And before we even do that, let me step back 100 paces. Before you even think about a tree, think about getting a soil sample for your yard. Now then, this also is about where you're going to plant your tree. If you have other items that you're going to do, many of us use raised beds. I don't worry about a soil sample because I know mine isn't any good, so I do the raised beds. But if you're going to put that tree in the ground, and if you're in town and when you purchased your house, you had probably some landscaping done. You had soil on there, you had a grass start and what have you. What you don't know is what's underneath that good soil. And you're burying that tree deeper than the 6 inches of dirt that they put on top. So it would be a good idea to go digging around your yard and pull up some of that dirt from down there and send it in a soil and get a soil sample so they can tell you whether you've got acidic or alkaline soil or you've got other problems with it. Because when the builders are putting this in, they dump a lot of their stuff out there. And you don't know it because it's already been covered over. This way you'll know whether you're burying your tree in some place where they dropped sludge or some of the chemicals that they were using to clean the house, because painters have been known to go out and dump the paint residue in the yard and what have you. So it's a safety factor for your trees to find out if that's happened. What is it, John? $10? $5?
About $12 for the basic.
$12 for the basic? Okay. And it takes, what, about 2 weeks to get it back? Yeah. And so now would be a good time if you're even thinking about doing something in the fall, or if you want to take a risk and plant a tree now. Nobody says you can't. It's just, did you want it to survive or not? And, you know, the same thing holds true for your hedges. Some of us are going to put hedges in, and we don't think of hedges as trees, but look at the root system. Look at the woody. These are woody items. Some of your hedges make it fine. They don't have the same problem that the trees do. But some of the trees that we can purchase, John, where did we say that we can get those bare root trees? The Forest Service is doing those?
That's already gone by.
It has it? Okay. Yeah. Oh well, next year. Some of the Forest Service plants trees every year, and they have a surplus, or they have some they want to get rid of. And they will pull them up, and they're considered bare root. And bare roots are handled totally differently. And if that's the way you want to go, again, do your research on that, because I just assumed that I could go ahead and dig a hole and put mine in and water it real well. It's nice if you give it a pre-start by soaking it. And some of them tell you to soak it longer than others, and that's bare root on a lot of your plants, shrubs, and trees. And it tells you that, it gives you an excerpt on pruning your trees. If you've noticed around town, have senior, Doris, what are those trees we've got in the medians? Yes, crepe myrtles. The city comes in every fall and takes them down to about that high. That's called crepe myrtle. Because they don't need to be taken down that low. I don't know why the city does it. I've never asked. There may be a reason. It doesn't look good to me. But maybe it's just to keep it down so they get a better start in the spring and they don't have to put as much on it. They do heavily mulch them, I will say that, and they come up every year and they look beautiful. So people can argue, well, yeah, but they look pretty during the summer. Yeah, but it doesn't keep them for very long, because after you've murdered them year after year, they will die out a lot quicker. Yes?
I have one that it was planted close to the house,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed that now it is banging the gutters. Is it okay? The trunks are only like about that big. Is it okay for me to cut those low at the bottom now so that they get off the house and the tree is directed to grow away from the house?
We recommend pruning the roses in February, Valentine's Day. They say the 14th is a good time to start pruning them. I don't imagine you can't. I'm not the final authority on it, but I would suggest going to one of the nurseries. And I say go to the nurseries, not to Lowe's or any of the other out stores, because they don't have experts on a lot of this, and they will be able to tell you when, where, and how much to cut back. And the recommendation, even for roses, is only take a third of it off at a time. I had one that was 8 feet tall. It's now 3 feet, and I took that down last week. And I'm going to reap the results from it, I know, but it was banging against the house, had ripped my screen all to shreds, and it was getting too unhealthy for its own size. And I just took drastic measures. We'll see what happens. I may have to wait another year for it to come back. But it's one of those things that you experiment with and learn the hard way, which is my modus operandi. I do everything the hard way.
Just one more thing. I
Yes.
planted roses last year,
Uh-huh.
just because I needed them. I planted them in about May, I know, about the 2-gallon buckets, and I planted them, and they look great. But I have not cut them back because they're not a year old yet. So should I still cut them back?
Marginally. How tall are they?
There's some only about that tall, and then there's, okay. don't cut
I'd leave them, because they obviously they have not reached the potential of their full growth. They have not overgrown anything. Now, what I've done, even with my older ones, is we know that we get that first flush of roses in the spring. And then as they die back when the heat comes, I'll cut that down to the next set of leaves on every single one that has given me a rose. And they'll come back, they'll give you new leaves, and some will say, yeah, but look at all those fingers you've got out there. Cut them back. Cut back what you don't want. Because some of them will do that, some of them won't. They'll just stay a single limb. I've got one that does that. It gives me fingers all the time, like it's going nanny nanny boo boo, screwed up here. But I will take them back. I don't feel guilty in doing it. There are papers like this on pruning roses, and they will tell you when, where, and how. And again, the norm has been right around February 14th. Are you going out today to prune your roses? I don't think so. A little bit cold and nippy. One lady said I pruned mine in March and I have just as good success. So again, play with it. We hesitate to experiment because I don't want to mess it up. It's been so good for so long. But if you don't play with it, you may be doing it more harm. So it's one of those things. Gardening is not for sissies. You have time invested. You have lots of money invested. And if you're going to do this, research, research, research. Because each of those items out there, whether it's an annual, perennial, a tree, a shrub, each has its own manual to go with it. And that's why I'm saying read the manual. It helps. And we get mad when all of a sudden the plants die right there on the vine. Well, what did I do wrong? It may have been that you didn't do anything wrong. Mother Nature's been cruel the last few years, and it's taken out a lot of our flowers. All right, let's look at the weather. Let's do some research, and you can go and find out what the weather's been for the last few years. Adjust your plants. So we know we've gone from what, 8A to 7B?
7B to 8A.
Oh, 7B to 8A. Okay, so we have changed our, and that's another thing I might bring up. When you go to any of the stores and you see these plants already, they're beautiful, they're colored, they're ready to go, they're in your yard, I'm happy. Did you read the tag on there and discover that it was made for southern Texas, not for northern Texas, and 9 will get you 10, it won't come back next year? When you go in there, pull the tags, look at them, see what they say. You have 99% of us have cell phones. Look it up. See if it might be adjustable to this. We have native and adapted are two phrases we use with master gardeners. Natives are the ones that you see growing around here all the time. Some of those you think are natives were actually adapted back then. Would you want to plant that same thing now? No. The established ones will probably make it. But the ones that we're going to plant now and change the growth on may not. So that's why I say it's not for sissies, because you have to do some studying to figure out what you're going to plant. On the back, we have pruning techniques. And again, for your trees, and sometimes Mother Nature doesn't give you an option. She comes in and breaks those limbs off in the worst way possible, and you have to deal with it. There are several arborists here in town that deal with those trees. If you've got a big old tree, you might want to consider paying the money to have an arborist come look at it. When you've got your younger trees, I think when you talk to the nursery people and ask for somebody who is versed in trees. When you go over to Garden World, they have a whole section back there of trees, and they have employees back there that deal just with those trees, and they can talk very knowledgeable about them. I do not want to be disrespectful or sound snipey, but when you go to Lowe's, the guy who was doing tools last week got pulled over into trees or into the garden because somebody was sick and they needed somebody out there. Are they going to be able to give you a whole lot of information? Maybe not. Some of them have their own trees. Some of them are very knowledgeable gardeners. Listen to what they're telling you. And I think all of you have seen that commercial on TV or heard it on the radio. Oh, I probably could do that. Probably does not fit in the tree world because, like I said, you are expending time, effort, energy, and a lot of money. So they have the trees there. They look healthy as all get out. Look at them. Look at their information. Google them. See if it's something that can grow there. They are also known to handle items that will not grow here. They are annuals. They are not perennials. A friend of mine called me one day and said, I don't understand. 3 years in a row, I've planted crepes, and she says, they aren't coming back. And I said, where'd you get them? She told me. And I said, did you read the tag on them? She says, no. But I've got one here. And I said, grab it for me and read it to me. Oh, no. And I said, what? She says, the first word that hits me is annual. Some of them, there are some that are marked annuals. I don't know how many pots of plants that I've done that way that I didn't read the instructions on. And I've been doing this now for what? Close to 20 years. And I get surprises every year for things that I didn't stop to think about. So it's not as though you'll ever be an expert on it, but give yourself some heads up and take the time. That's what it takes, is time to do this studying. On the bottom here, we've given you several references, or let me put it this way, Texas A&M has given you several references. You can also check out books here, any of the libraries. A lot of the libraries have books on trees. In the spring, the library has the book sale. Was it around June something? And somebody quote me that. I have picked up a lot of books on gardening from that plant sale. And they are ones that have been turned back by people who just gave up. Their kids said, Mom and Dad don't need this anymore. There's nothing wrong, and that's not why they're in the sale. Other people just didn't want them anymore, and new things have come out. Doesn't mean the old things are bad, but if you don't want to spend a whole bunch of money on books, but you want that knowledge, do that. Another thing to do is your seed catalogs. When you order out those seed catalogs, and the reason I say that is you may not order from because they're expensive. Oh, man. You can need to go together with a bunch of friends to buy seeds from them because it's the shipping that hurts. But they are a beautiful reference for any of the plants, trees, shrubs, whatever it is you want to order. They will give you the pros and the cons of them, and you can keep them for years because they are good reference manuals. Seeds. Somebody brought up, why would you buy seeds from Dollar Tree? They're cheap. Yeah, but they grow. Believe it or not, several of our gardeners, we have one master gardener who deals with the junior master gardeners, and she gets a lot of her seeds from Dollar Tree, and the majority of them grow. Now, on the back of some of the seed packets, you will see a ratio. In other words, you've got 100 seeds in there, and they might put 50, 60, 70% chance that all of them or any of them would grow. And you can, right now, if you want, buy a pack of seeds that you think you want to grow, and just experiment, plant a couple of them, see what they're going to do. But again, Dollar Tree seeds are not all bad. And yes, they are cheaper. You don't get as many in some packs, but I found some packs there that actually have more seeds in them than the ones that I get from Lowe's, in the ones with the proper names on them, the expensive names. I'm not making light of them. I'm just saying these are observations of things that you learn as you go. Now then, audience participation, questions, comments. Yes?
I have a question and a wondering.
Okay.
So my question is there, or like, what is research, or what do you know about putting like a PVC pipe down into the ground and watering into the PVC?
That works, doesn't it, John?
Yeah, for the most part.
For the most part, it does. And again, you're going to watch your angle. You're going to experiment with it. And what do you want to call it? I get hung up on things, so I guess it's my hang up. Water meters. They are worth their weight in gold. A lot of people will tell you, all you need is your finger, just stick it down. Well, you're looking at a tree with a 4-foot root ball. It's not going to do that. But if you get down to the depth of that water meter and you're not seeing any moisture, you know you've got issues. And that's why that PVC pipe might be a really good idea. Because especially with the weather we've got, a lot of them, is it the Olas, is that what you call them?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, they're ceramic pots that hold water next to your trees. You can find on Etsy all different kinds of ways to water your trees and plants. You've seen the ones with the Coke bottles in the adobe that you put in there. You've seen them with the plastic spikes on them. There are a lot of ways to water your plants. Don't be afraid to do it. Tomatoes are another item. And I'm not going to get into tomatoes because that's totally out of my depth, but those are some things that I've seen people do, is because your tomatoes transpire quite a bit of moisture. And in doing so, if you aren't paying attention to that soil, and I know on mine, because I've got mine in buckets on the porch, I'm watering mine sometimes twice a day. And what was the other one I was thinking about? Well, like I said, there's all kinds of contraptions you can use out there. Don't be afraid to experiment. Try these things. They can't hurt. And a lot of them don't cost that much, especially when you're using a liter bottle in one of those spikes. You're, what, $2, $3? You've already spent $1.25 or $2.25 now, I guess, on a liter of Coke. Utilize the bottle for something. I've seen some that will take the Coke, the big bottles, and take an awl and pinprick holes in there, fill it full of water, and let it, especially if you're going away for the weekend, and you know you aren't going to be able to get back. You can do some of your younger trees the same way. Again, by the time you've got that tree in there, you've got more education than you really wanted or needed. So that tree should be fairly safe and should be fairly set up. What else can you use for?
My wondering thing?
Yes.
So I have 2 live oaks in my backyard. I planted them about 15 years ago. And I had just by observation over the last decade and a half, noticing how they adapt well to my particular environment, because I've discovered that when we get very heavy rains, my backyard will have puddle, just like a little pond back there. So my drainage is not great, or it doesn't soak in great. What would be signs of like the root systems kind of drowning in water? And if they were, would there be anything I could do about it? But like I said, they've survived it, but then sometimes when I'm just looking at that water that just sits there for the next 4 or 5 days, I'm like, it doesn't seem to be soaking in super fast.
I hesitate to go there. However, John, would you suggest maybe digging a little bit of a trench around so that the water can dissipate more, or just leave it alone? Why argue with success?
I just think it sounds like you have probably a very clay soil, and the live
So-
oaks have no problem with that at all.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. But it's one of those things is, you'll know when your tree isn't healthy. I mean, you see it every day, you admire it, you look at it, and then one day you come home and you go, where'd those yellow leaves come from? And it's mid-July and you're going, we got issues. What kind of issues? Was it the weather? Did we not get enough water? Did you forget to water it? Do we have disease? Whatever. You can pick those leaves, put them in a baggie, bring them into the extension office, and they will find somebody, even if they have to send it to Texas A&M to look at it and take a look at it and see. You can take them locally. Some of the nurseries will know. But it's just that one limb, I'm not going to worry about it, is not an option. Because if it's starting to get something in one area, is it going to spread to the other? You don't want to risk with those older trees. In fact, the other night when I gave this presentation, we had a gentleman who has a oak that's from spread to spread is well over 100 feet. They figure it's right at 300 years. It's been there since before the wagon train, because his great-grandmother came in the wagon train, and it was there when she got there. So that's the family tree, and they do everything they can to protect it. And one of his concerns was he had a big old knothole full of bees. And he's had somebody come and remove the bees, not once, not twice, but 3 times. He tried putting a plaster on it, and the bees still got in there. They remember where home is, and it's just like with the birds in migration. They will go back to that. And he was concerned that the bees were damaging it. And as it just so happened, we had a gentleman in the audience who belongs to the Beekeepers Association. He goes, no, those honeybees are actually helping, because they're bringing in that honey is a healer. And you know how they tell you to put honey on a cut? Well, not a wide open gash, but it helps heal things up. And so it's keeping that knothole from expanding, although it got its start early on. And the beekeeper and I agreed that the worst thing that could happen is the wind could take it out, because it's got a weak spot in it, and you get one of those derechos or one of those heavier winds, depending on which direction it's coming from, it could flip it up that way and bring it down and break it off. But the bees are not going to hurt it. So again, ask before. He was going to treat it with 7 and a few other things. Well, you're going to destroy the bees who are part of the ecosystem. You're going to possibly spread it to the bird feed and a few other things. And poisons are one of the courts of last resort. If you've got something that's eating your stuff, find out what you can do about it. I think Garden World, I know, has aphids and not aphids, what are those? Ladybugs and something else. Oh, there's ladybugs and something else. Yes, lacewings. And those may be something you can use. One thing that they told us years ago was that if you're going to get ladybugs, turn them loose at night. Because if you turn them loose during the daytime, they're just going to fly and look for other places. You want them in your yard doing their thing. Well, once they get there and overnight and they can smell what's going on and realize food source, they'll probably be more apt to stay. You're not going to keep 100% of them, but you'll keep the majority of them. There are other natural products we can put on our plants. We can just take a hose to some of them and get rid of some of your aphids. Now then, when you're talking milkweed, you want as many aphids as you can get, because you're drawing the monarch butterflies. And
Is there any way you could get rid of fungus on trees?
talk to an arborist, talk to the guy at the at Garden World or one of the nurseries. There are several ways of doing it without being chemically unsound. And sometimes the year, because of the droughts or the dry spells we get, bring those on. And it may be a real simple solution to fix it, but again, talk to somebody who's familiar with that type of tree. We try not to use chemicals where we don't, because of the birds, bees, the food source. And again, something as simple as a garden hose could just take care of it. Yes?
I just have some guys start in January, because I have so many weeds. The weeds are driving me nuts, and the kids can't play in the backyard because of the stickers. So I have these people start to spray every other month. They've only done it 1 month. I don't want it to kill my earthworms. I don't want it to hinder the birds or the butterflies, all the stuff that comes. Are those chemicals really as bad as I'm imagining them to be?
Not necessarily. It all depends on what they use. Talk to them and ask them what they're using, and ask them those questions. And
I did ask them about the earthworms, and they said no, but I didn't really trust that initially.
yeah. Well, if they said probably, I'd get suspicious.
Yes.
No, it's worth the effort to ask them. They probably wouldn't make you any guarantees, but ask about the chemicals being used. Sometimes they're benign chemicals. We call things that we don't understand or know the chemical composition of all chemicals. Not necessarily. It can be something as simple as grapefruit juice or orange juice or something else that's mixed in with something else that you can spray on there that will deter them. So it's not necessarily a chemical in the true sense of the word. It's just something we spray on there to get rid of them. Okay. We have not reached the other subject. You didn't tell me. Time out. Okay. Our next subject is going to be oak wilt. How many of you have oak trees? Oh, I'm leaving. This is read the directions. This is your maintenance manual. This is going to tell you all the things you didn't want to hear, didn't want to know. It's not all bad. And again, depending on where you live and any problem, is anybody having any problems with oak trees?
I have a red oak, and mine always drops all its leaves, but my neighbors, one across the street and one down, theirs don't.
Yeah, mine doesn't.
I have 2 oak trees purchased at different times, and one loses all its leaves, and the other one doesn't lose its leaves until the green ones push it off the tree. And they're sitting there in the same yard, both healthy.
Yeah.
Mine died down and then it came back up from the roots.
Uh-huh.
And so it grew probably about that tall in 1 year.
Uh-huh.
After it had died, completely died,
Uh-huh.
and it came back, you know. So
Yes.
I have several oak trees and I have 3 different lands in California County, so they're spread out. Anyway, some are the 300-year-old oaks, some are not as old, but I've started losing some in the last couple of years. And they grow a lot in groves.
Yes.
You know. And I don't know, I'm assuming it's the weather, you know.
Don't, again, like I said, assumptions, you know what that is.
Yeah.
And that's why this will give you an idea.
It's not this.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
I've seen this.
okay. But trees all things communicate. Their roots are intertwined.
Right.
And we've had instances where somebody has pulled up a red oak out of the middle of the white oaks and had absolutely no problems with it. Genetics, like anything else. And it may have been that at the time that the disease was going through the roots, this guy didn't have his roots deep enough. So you don't know without asking. And once you start seeing something like that, it could be something totally different than oak wilt. And weather, yes. And lack of water, yes. But again, take a sample of those leaves when they start getting funky and take them in and get them checked, because they're more, the professionals can put a name to it and a cure or last rites. So that's one, yes.
Do trees have a lifespan?
Yeah,
They do?
just like everything else.
Okay.
Yeah, and
How
some,
long will an oak go? I mean,
well, you've got, depending on the style, the type of oak. Some of them live longer than others. Obviously, we've got the 300 plus. What was the one was it one at the White House that just died here recently, and it was well over 200 or 300 years old, I think.
They've got some that are.
And again, remembering back in the day when those trees were growing, there was nothing on the plains but buffalo. And they were well fertilized and well taken care of. But now we have car exhaust, we've got other things in the air that affect everything we've got, including us. And so it may take down the lifespan on some of the trees. You've heard that they can grow too, but it's just like our genetics show that my grandmother lived to 98 years old. My brother just died at 56. What do you know? It all depends on what's going on around it, how well it's taken care of and that sort of thing. What is the Afghan pine that only lives for 30 years? One of those.
Yeah, one of the pines.
One of the pines only lives for 30 years, and that's just natural for them. It has nothing to do maybe with the way you took care of it. So again, research.
pecan trees, what is the life, usually, if they're healthy, what is the lifespan of a pecan tree?
I've seen pecan trees live over 70.
Okay.
I know of, and I'm sure they can go well over 100.
Okay,
Yeah,
If you can keep them alive, there's the hard part.
yeah.
okay.
Well, you get those tent caterpillars and what, yeah. Yes,
We have property at Lake Brownwood. This year will be the 60th year that it has belonged to my family. 2 houses over, now this place has been there forever. Every oak tree on that lot has now died. And we're worried that is that.
plausibility, a very strong plausibility.
What, there's a pecan tree in the place, there's other trees that.
The oak wilt won't get to the pecans as far as I know, but if you are, I would suggest you talk to an arborist, because they have an infusion, and they can also put a barrier around it. When I say put a barrier, they dig a barrier to break the roots from the other trees getting there. But they know where to go to look for them.
And these are all big trees.
Yeah.
I mean, they're big
Mhm.
trees. And then there's a draw between the property between her property and then our property's next to theirs.
Uh-huh.
Where the lake comes up, so it's not that they're not getting enough water, there's plenty of water, but the weird thing that we want to say, 2 people that have lived on that property have killed themselves.
I'd be suspecting of the water.
We were like,
Yeah,
I mean, it's just.
yeah.
It's a bad death.
Yeah, what are the odds, right, really?
I mean, that was just kind of a fun fact.
Yeah, goodness. But no, but like I said, I seriously, in your case, I would get it checked soon. Because,
We have 60 trees on our lot,
Uh-huh.
almost my lot.
and that's what I'm saying, it is worth the effort to pay an arborist to come pay you a visit and take a look and see and make recommendations. What is it, it's a beetle that starts it and then it
beetle
spreads.
spreads it.
And so depending on whether you've got wounds, and the irony of it is, you can have, the bark is fine, little bitty hole down here that you didn't see that it was able to crawl in. And then all of a sudden that bark just, there's your issue. It talks in here about fungus mat. And what they'll do is it'll be a fungus mat in there that spider webs and gets into the corpuscles, if you will, of the tree and starts spreading it. And then from there it goes to the roots, and the roots are intertwined and they travel. And that's why you may not know you've got it until it hits you. So he may not check all 60 trees, but the trees that are closest to where you're worried about. And that doesn't mean that it always goes forward to back. It could go start in the back and work forward. So a good check of most of your trees, and you can take a walk around or drive around and take a look at all those trees and see if you notice any anomalies. And again, write it down. And if you're not sure and you really don't want to spend the money on an arborist right now, make note of the day and the time you were there. Go back out a couple weeks later and take a look and see if you see any changes. And at that point, push the panic button and call an arborist. Because you don't want to lose those trees. I mean, those are history. Those are historic. It's something that we all love to see. It's a beautiful oak tree.
It's just weird that it's just right, just that one place.
Yeah.
Across the cove, down the cove, there's nothing else, just that one spot.
Yeah. And you may be lucky. It may be there, and he or she may just go take a look. And they can tell, they've got ways that they can tell or take samples, if the property owner will let them, and see if they can tell what really killed it. Because it could have been something else that got spread in there and not oak wilt. But you don't know till you look. And it's not worth taking a chance on those beautiful things.
You know, we have trees that need to be trimmed up now, some that I worry about, do we trim them and risk an infection coming in?
Mm-hmm. And when did they say was the best time to?
Right now.
Right now?
Yeah,
And
before it gets warm.
before it gets warm. And the other thing is, do we paint now or do we do it only when it's warm? Always paint your wound. Now, it's come see, come saw as to whether you're using black paint or white paint. I don't know as it makes a difference. Again, talk to somebody who knows, because it does not discuss that in this handout. But you want to paint it.
With any kind of paint?
Enamel?
It's anything will pretty much work. You know, usually, the latex is
Okay.
works well. The actual spray paint that they say for wound heal will work. But when they talk about, especially with oak wilt, it's you cut the limb, grab your can and spray it that fast.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you risk that infection. So.
In a lot of your trees, when you cut a limb, even in the rose bushes, you see that sap come up. That's a healing sap. And when you cut some of your shrubs, you'll see it start to get moisture on it. That's sealing. The oak trees don't do the same thing. And if they do, it's a sweet, and it brings the bugs that you don't want. And not just the oak wilt beetle, it'll bring other things that can increase the chances of infection. And when you are trimming, whether it's your plants or your trees, when you go from plant to plant, get yourself those bacterial wipes, the 99% Clorox wipes. Wipe those blades off good when you go from plant to plant and from tree to shrub to whatever. Wipe them always. because that's how you can spread it, because you get a sticky sap on there that's got the disease on it, and then you spread it yourself.
And when you call an arborist, make sure they're certified arborists.
Yeah, certified being the key word. And that,
Are they expensive to come out?
I don't know, but like any other specialist, I'd say so. But if they save you $100,000 down the line, they're worth the $1,500 you paid them. I don't know what the going rate is. I've not looked at it. But it's just worth, like I said, you're not losing those 60 trees. Not in your lifetime, anyway. But just food for thought. Now, then it goes in here and it talks about the red oaks, their family, and the live oaks are mostly killed by oak wilt when compared with white oaks. And then it gives you the white oak family. And the caveat is, however, those white oaks such as shin, chinkapin, and lacy that grow in strands with interconnected root systems also may die in large numbers from oak wilt because they've been infected. And on the opposite side, they've had some that they pulled from there, didn't know they were infected, and they've never had a problem with them. So again, you're rolling the dice to see what you're going to get. And all of us love the oaks. We had a case in Alaska where we have spruce bark beetle. The spruces that we have, we call them black spruce. And the reason is because a lot of these spruce trees that and they're now into a tree, and you've got black spruce for miles. Pretty to look at for black and white. It attacked all the live spruce. And you could watch the yellowing across the hillside. You knew exactly which direction it was going. You could see the start and where it was going. Not much you could do about it. The sad part about it becomes they are dead trees. You have thousands of acres of wilderness, and there's no way you can get all those trees out of there, so it now becomes fire tinder. And where I was living, we're 300 miles from everybody. And the only way you can get there is by plane. And the chances of spreading that were slim and none. We had a cabin. The Forest Service had a cabin that was built by a trapper back at the turn of the century. And they'd maintained that cabin all these years. Well, you know, cabin wood rots too. So they had one side of it that had 3 bad logs in it, and they decided to fix it. So they went the extra mile, figured out what the trees were, and went and got 3 more logs and brought them in and fixed that cabin. And you get a fire started that far out, it's not going to hurt most anything because there aren't, in that area, there aren't that many cabins out there. But it does come back, and depending on the winds, like with California, it blows it right into it. So it's not anything you can do about it, it's just there. All right, Mother Nature being what it is, it's going to take 100 years, but it becomes mulch. It becomes part of the ecosystem and helps other things grow. My tongue gets twisted when I try to say it. What is that planting system they talk about using the logs? Hugelkultur, where you put the log down and you plant next to it, and it eats off the bark of the tree. And even if you plant the the logs all the way around, it's a good growing atmosphere. And, so Mother Nature will take care of the rest of Mother Nature in spite of the dead logs, because they will become part of the ecosystem. Many times you have people tell you, don't dig up those trees, those dead trees that are in your yard, because bugs nest in them. Not all of them are good bugs, not all of them are bad bugs, but the birds benefit from them. There are other things that will benefit from those dead trees. With the one dead tree I've got in my yard, I'm putting a bird bath on it. And that will benefit the birds. I don't want to take it, and I know there's things growing in it otherwise, but hey, lunch and a drink. Who can argue? Okay, we've talked about the fungal baths. We've talked about all that. Let's see here. And like they said, laboratory diagnosis. They suggest that you get a Forest Service forester, a county extension agent, or a trained arborist to come and take the proper samples. Because what they're going to do is they've got a little auger that can go into the tree and pull out a wood sample. They can look at the leaves, they can take samples of the leaves, but they have special bags that they put these in because they don't want to spread it either. And you've seen this get away from me. You'll have somebody at the extension office, you come in with this leaf all covered in bugs, and it's like, oh, don't do that, cover it up. Because you don't know where that will get spread. It's just like one of my brother-in-laws raised chickens for the government. And there are rules about what you wear and what you do. He was not allowed to have his own birds. For him if he had his own chickens. Well, he didn't. He went to a friend's house, went out and helped him with his chicken coop, came back and spread that disease in the coop. Now you know why eggs are so expensive, because when they get one of those diseases in there, he had 10,000 birds in his facilities. 10,000 birds had to be dispatched. The place had to be sterilized, and he could not bring chickens back into it for over 5 weeks. Because after they sterilized it, they put big heaters in there that kept the place just boiling. So that even the soil, they had to remove at least 6 inches of soil out of there. And that's part of what we're facing today, is somehow some of these diseases are getting spread, and your wild birds are the ones that are getting blamed for it. But we as well-meaning humans can do the same thing, and that's why I say, don't bring in a single plant, put it in a baggie, wash your hands before you take it in, so that you know that you're not spreading it in there either. Because several other people will handle it. A little off the subject, I had a friend of mine in Alaska who went to his daughter's PTA meeting, and she was showing him all the pets, and she says, Daddy, I learned how to handle snakes. So they go into the room where the garter snake is, and they're handling it. Rich is handling it, doesn't think anything about it. It's summertime, just before school gets out. And he goes home, and the next door neighbor's cat always would come over for a pet every night. Rich reached down to pet that cat, and that snake spell was still on his arm, and that cat shredded his arm. Because, would you have known that? Nobody would have. So this is what we don't know. He came in with his arm, he had iodine on it and everything else, and I looked at it and I said, what happened? He says, would you believe a snake? And I said, no. He says, how about a cat? And I said, that I believe, because I can see the scratches. So he told me the story. And I said, give me your arm for a minute. And I rolled it over, and he had blood, what do they call that? Yeah, blood infection going up his arm. I said, you go to the emergency room right now, because that cat had bit him as well as scratched him. And so he was getting that blood problem. And he went in and got it checked, and he said, it's a good thing I did, because he had a weak immune system anyway. And he was bandaged up and medicated for weeks. But not knowing the little things we don't know. Like say you know until you don't know. All right, anything else about oak wilt? Any questions?
I'm afraid now, because last year we trimmed the tree, but we didn't paint it.
Well, let's see what happens this spring. And another thing I might add that I've found out more by the hard way than anything else is don't think it's dead until you know it's dead. A lot of the plants, because of this weather change, don't necessarily come up when you think they should. And I water them as if. And I've been very surprised. 2 years ago, I took a dead rose bush out. There were roots left. Guess what I found last spring when I went out there? I've got the start of a new rose bush. But I watered in that area because I was watering the peonies that I had right next to it. And I just, maybe you will, maybe you won't, not knowing whether it would or not. So don't be in a hurry to pull anything out or up until you've given it a chance. What was the one plant I had that I know should have been up in March, didn't show up until almost June. And I was surprised that it was that late. But there was something about the conditions it didn't like. Whether it was the heat, the cold, or whatever it was just very latent in coming up. And I know my hibiscus, one of my hibiscus did that to me. And so don't take for granted that just because it doesn't come up on the first day of spring that it's not going to make it. Water as if. Don't overwater, but water like you would normally water, and you'd be amazed sometimes what will come up.
That's what happened with my maple and my oak tree.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought, well, they're dead, you know, no need to water it, but I watered it anyway. I came back, and
Yeah.
my maple was nearly as tall as I am now.
They have timetables of their own, not our timetable, their timetable. But here again, one of the things that has been suggested, and we suggest in our class too, when you get your new greenery, keep a diary. And maybe just for a year, 6 months, whatever it's going to take until we reach the term established. Because you're going to look at it and go, okay, it's not growing the way I want it to. Keep a track of it and see when it comes up. Keep those diaries because, or put it on a calendar, either way. But go back. This year, it came up earlier. That's good news. But next year it may not. Go back and see what precipitated it. Note on there the changes. In other words, we had a very light winter. Very dry, no water. Think of the conditions that you saw or didn't see and write those down. It takes a little bit of time to learn how to do this. But once you've got the gist down of how you want to take care of those issues, you can go back and check and see what was going on. And that's when we say until established. Established is when you know it's growing tall and straight, that you know that it's coming up every year, and that and check for fertilizer. Some of the things that I did not realize that my blackberry bushes needed fertilizer. They're wild things, while they're weeds, why would they need fertilizer? They do. There are other things out there that will do that. And that's why we recommend the soil test too, is because you can find out what you've got there and what you need to supplement with and when. Because some of these items that you're going to put down in the fall, not in the spring. It's like, what is it, pre-emergent? You put it down twice a year, but there's certain times you put it down, and not in the middle of the season when they're all sprouted. It isn't going to work. And so again, timetables, write these things down. It doesn't hurt. And that diary also helps you go back and look at that item, that tree, shrub, or perennial, and note the differences in it, and it keeps you abreast of what's going on. And that way with the trees, wait a minute, those weren't yellow last week. And you become more aware of your surroundings and how to take care of those issues. Anybody else? Yes?
I have a question about acorns. We have a smallish backyard. We have 2 oak trees and so many acorns. And I don't know if I should try to get them up so that the grass will grow under the trees or just leave them. I mean, there are some squirrels and some blue jays getting some of them, but we have so many acorns.
Well, two thoughts on that. Number one, a lot of your trees, especially I think it's oak trees, give off a substance in the soil that will not allow anything else to grow around it, because they don't want that grass, that plant, robbing them of their water, and it's their water, not yours. And so consequently, they put off these things. One other thought is rake them all up, and if you know somebody who's got a pig, take them to them, because they'll eat almost anything, and they like those acorns. Yeah, and years ago, I would have said take them to the zoo. In Alaska, they learned the hard way. It's against the law to waste fish and game. And you don't go out and just kill a caribou and take the horns. You have to account for that meat and what have you. A lot of the people would bring it home. They didn't want it, but Fish and Game said they had to, and they'd throw it in the freezer. Well, it got freezer burn. Well, nobody wants to eat freezer burned meat, so they found a new way to get rid of it. They took it to the zoo. A couple of those animals had, it wasn't wasting disease, but it was something else, and it killed one of the zoo animals. So then, nobody could take fish or game there. And a lot of your pigs will utilize some of these things. A lot of it went to the dump, and if it was found that you were taking fish and or game to the dump, you were turned in, because that's wanton waste of a resource, because that wasn't what it was meant for. It was meant for eating. And but it's the way the world turns, and like I said, giving the acorns to the pigs is not all bad, but be careful that they haven't been sprayed, and there's nothing else that you could worry about. And observing your animals in the yard, as long as the birds are still flying and the squirrels are still bothering you, you're pretty safe. But anything else? That being said, I think we're done for this session. And thank you all very much for coming out today. We really appreciate it. And if you have